Unraveling the mystery of Cindy James. Was it murder, suicide, or something else? On June 8, 1989, the body of Cindy James, a 44-year-old nurse, was discovered in Richmond, British Columbia. Her death marked the tragic culmination of a 6-year saga filled with mystery, fear, and a sequence of bizarre events that baffled investigators and the public alike. The Cindy James case remains one of Canada's most perplexing unsolved mysteries, leaving many unanswered questions and a trail of haunting theories. The early years of harassment. Cindy James was a nurse and a counselor who led a seemingly ordinary life until October 1982, when she reported receiving threatening phone calls. These calls were the beginning of what would become a sustained campaign of harassment. Over the next several years, Cindy reported more than 100 incidents of harassment, which included threatening phone calls, disturbing letters, and physical attacks. The incidents grew increasingly more severe over time. Cindy reported being followed, having her phone lines cut, and finding threatening notes left on her car and at her home. On several occasions, she was found tied up and seemingly assaulted, though she could never recall details of the attacks. Despite the severity and frequency of these incidents, the police were unable to find any concrete evidence of a stalker. As the harassment continued, Cindy's mental health deteriorated. She became increasingly anxious and paranoid, convinced that someone was out to get her. Police investigation and skepticism. The Vancouver Police Department launched an investigation into Cindy's claims. However, as time went on and no solid evidence surfaced to support her reports of harassment, the police began to suspect that Cindy might be orchestrating the events herself. They pointed to inconsistencies in her stories, the lack of witnesses, and the fact that no fingerprints were found on any of the threatening letters or other evidence. In a controversial move, the police even suggested that Cindy's injuries were self-inflicted and that her actions were a cry for attention rather than genuine threats to her life. Cindy's family, however, firmly believed she was being targeted by an unknown assailant and criticized the police for not taking her claims seriously. The mysterious death. On May 25, 1989, Cindy James disappeared. Her car was found abandoned in a shopping mall parking lot with groceries and a gift for a friend's child inside. 2 weeks later, on June 8th, her body was discovered in the yard of an abandoned house. She was lying on her side, her hands and feet bound behind her back. A black nylon stocking was tied tightly around her neck. The circumstances of her death only deepened the mystery. An autopsy revealed that she had died from a combination of a drug overdose and strangulation. The toxicology report found a lethal dose of morphine and other drugs in her system. Despite the clear signs of foul play, the coroner's inquest concluded with an open verdict, stating that there was insufficient evidence to determine whether Cindy's death was a result of suicide, accidental death, or murder. Theories and speculation. The death of Cindy James left more questions than answers, and numerous theories emerged about what had happened to her. One theory posits that Cindy, suffering from mental illness, had orchestrated the harassment campaign herself and ultimately took her own life. Proponents of this theory argue that the lack of evidence pointing to an external assailant and the increasingly erratic behavior Cindy exhibited in her final years support this conclusion. On the other hand, many believe Cindy was indeed the victim of a malicious stalker who cleverly evaded detection. Cindy's family, especially her father, believed she was murdered and that the police failed to protect her and adequately investigate her claims. They point to the improbability of Cindy binding herself in the way she was found, and the sheer terror she seemed to exhibit in her final days, as evidence that she was genuinely afraid for her life. A third theory suggests a more complex scenario involving both external harassment and Cindy's declining mental health. This theory proposes that Cindy was initially harassed, which led to her becoming increasingly paranoid and possibly self-harming as her mental state deteriorated. In this scenario, her death could have been the result of a tragic accident or a suicide influenced by her mental distress. The legacy of the Cindy James case. To this day, the case of Cindy James remains one of the most puzzling and debated mysteries in Canadian crime history. It has been featured in numerous books, documentaries, and crime shows, each offering different perspectives on what might have happened. The case serves as a sobering reminder of the complexities involved in stalking and harassment cases, particularly regarding the role of mental health in both victims and investigations. What happened to Cindy James may never be fully understood. Her death is a chilling enigma, highlighting the devastating impact of prolonged psychological trauma and the sometimes thin line between victim and perceived instigator. As the years pass, the mystery of Cindy James continues to haunt those who have tried to piece together the truth, leaving us to wonder what really happened to her on that fateful day in June 1989. The case of Cindy James is a compelling example of how unresolved mysteries can linger in the public consciousness, raising important questions about victim support, mental health, and the limitations of criminal investigations. Whether Cindy was a victim of foul play or her demons, her story remains a poignant and perplexing chapter in the annals of true crime.